Since its founding, the EAPC forged paths to peace in the Middle East in order to preserve the energy independence of the State of Israel and the Israeli industry, even in times of crisis and international political siege. Values of professionalism, innovation, and progress, alongside a long tradition of energy production, turned the vision into a reality and created a driving force for international economic growth. At the time of the founding of the State of Israel and the end of the British Mandate in the Land of Israel, the new state stood helpless in terms of energy production. The flowing of oil from Iraq to the refineries ceased, and Israel had to search for alternative energy sources in the Persian Gulf and in the USSR. The situation came to a climax and became the worst energy crisis Israel has ever known at the beginning of the Suez Crisis in 1956, when Israel again had to look for alternative energy sources. Levi Eshkol, the former Prime Minister and Minister of Finance at the time of the Suez Crisis, made a courageous decision to begin an Egyptian fuel supply from Ras Setter to Eilat, and from there it was to be transferred via pipe to Beersheba using the Afike Neft company. However, this initiative also did not suffice. During the search for new oil sources, the relations with the Shah in Iran tightened, and in a joint venture, oil tankers began supplying oil to the tanks in Eilat, which then transferred the oil to the north. After the Six-Day War in 1967, which brought about the closing of the Suez Canal and severed the tightening relations with Iran, an idea was born to lay an oil line between Eilat Port and Ashkelon Port. In an incredible operation, a 42-inch pipeline was installed between Eilat and Ashkelon and bridged together the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. At the end of 1978, following the Iranian Revolution, the entire initiative collapsed and EAPC hit a crisis. But this crisis did not stop EAPC. The company began importing oil from Egypt after the peace agreement in 1979, and when that source ended as well, the company began their flagship project of transferring oil through a pipe in a two-directional manner, from Eilat to Ashkelon and from Ashkelon to Eilat. EAPC continues to break the boundaries and announces an ambitious energy initiative, the Med-Red Project, a reoperation of the oil pipeline between the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea for the purpose of maintaining a regular two-directional flow of oil and naphtha from the UAE to Europe, and in the opposite direction, from the Mediterranean Sea to the Far East, while using the company's infrastructure as a central hub at the international trade junction in the Middle East. Abraham Accords, the peace agreement between Israel and the UAE, is a true breakthrough in the normalization of the economic and trade relations between the two countries. Med-Red is a manifestation of the fruits of peace, a joint venture of energy entrepreneurs from the UAE and Israel alongside American support. Petromol, part of the National Holding Group from the UAE, will function as the trading infrastructure for the regular supply of oil and its byproducts. The Eilat-Ashkelon pipeline, connecting countries, nations, and people.